Hey everyone, thank you for clicking on this video of Finding Fandom. Yet again, another episode, and this one I've been looking forward to because this one is with none other than Jess Bragg, also known as Omnidog from Omnidog's Vault. And I had a really fun time talking with Jess both before, during, and after the interview, and I would like to really meet up with him again, whether it'll be on his channel, my channel, any other channel really, because he is just a great guy to talk to. And part of why I wanted to do this interview with him is because he has a unique perspective because of how long he has been in this game of comic book collecting. And not many of those who has been in the game that long has YouTube channels. So I think that makes for a unique perspective on his part. And so I was very thankful to have this interview with him, and I hope you will like and enjoy this just as much as I did. So here is Omnidog from Omnidog's Vault. Hey everyone. Welcome. This is yet another episode of Finding Fandom. My name is Joachim, and today I have a very special guest here with me, the Omnidog himself.
Hello, Joachim. How are you?
I'm doing very fine, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you for inviting me on.
Of course. And yeah, we have, of course, been in contact for a long time, actually, commenting on each other's videos and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a while since we did this live, so I'm very excited for this.
Me too.
Good. And yeah, what I want to do with this Finding Fandom thing is like, I do interviews with different people in the comic book community that I feel contributes with their own style in their videos and everything and perspective. And it really revolves around what happened with the pandemic and everything, Comic-Cons shutting down, people turning a little more into buying things maybe, because we know that the graphic novel sales and everything quadrupled during the latest years. So yeah, maybe finding comfort more in the material stuff maybe than instead of the community. But I want to show them that the love for the community still is stronger than the consumerism itself. And I think you are a fine example of both.
Oh, well, thank you. I definitely feel like things are getting more back to normal, maybe what the hobby was back in 2019. I feel like sales of I only collect collected editions. I feel like that's leveled out now. Now that people are traveling, going out to dinner and stuff, I think discretionary income has sort of moved away from anybody that entered the hobby last year. And so that some of it has left the hobby for a time period. I don't know for how long, but I think it's given everybody a chance to catch up on putting out enough collected editions so that the collector has a chance at actually getting them, whereas they were selling out instantaneously last year for the first time ever. In my experience. And I think eBay sales on certain things have slowed down a lot too, which indicates to me that there's not the fevered pitch there was to acquire vintage comic books or collected editions. It was probably good for the hobby, but now I think we have it back to a percentage of new people and the hardcore guys like me and you and people who've been collecting for a long time.
Yeah, because there definitely was a strong, big new wave of collectors when this all started back in, the shift of 2019 and everything. And yeah, that year, that was really crazy when it came to, I mean, we both hang out at instocktrades.com, of course, and buying from there. And every week every week where there was a big hardcover announcement or omnibus, it was fight night.
Yeah, it was. And we weren't used to that. We were used to just going on there, getting our books and then waiting for our books. And then everybody got slammed and the post office got slammed. And we were waiting 6 and 8 weeks for our books if we got them at all.
Yeah.
Some people look back in anger at that. It was all a learning experience for everybody. Nobody could have predicted. I mean, I knew the pandemic, I knew COVID was coming to the United States. But I don't think I ever figured out that it would cause a boom in my hobby. And
No.
I don't think the publishers or the distributor or the retailers thought that would happen either. So I can't get angry at that. It's just, it happened. And, now we know.
Yeah. And I mean, as you said, the distributors couldn't have known. I mean, they do all of their works 6 months in advance, if not even more, on what did they decide on how much to print and so on and so forth. So it took them at least 6 months to get ahead, and maybe even more because they didn't know the actual situation before maybe 1 or 2 months into it, on how much more people wanted and how many more that discovered this wonderful hobby.
Yeah. Well,
So
I hope we kept some of the new people.
I do too, because new people and new faces, new visions on what this could be is always nice and welcomed.
You have to have it for growth.
Yeah, exactly. And me, myself, I'm happy that I had some control on what to pick up, because they were starting to announce even more titles. Even maybe they printed less of them, but we got a lot of more omnibus titles and other editions, of course, during this time, even now. And we're not probably going to stop, not until. And I mean, what we're going to talk about later on, I guess, is of course the fear of missing out, because there is so much stuff.
I'm an expert on FOMO.
I know. But yeah, we'll start with something simpler, I guess.
Sure.
So yeah, how did you discover comic books?
Well,
first time.
Yeah. I probably was 5 or 6, and I remember I just have this vague memory of it being at somebody's house as a little kid, and there were teenagers there, and they had comic books, and I started looking at them. No, I'll say I was 4 or 5, and I started looking at them, and I got really interested in them. And that was when I lived in Ohio, and when I was 6, we moved to California, which is where I grew up. And that's when I was 6 or 7, they were 12 cents an issue. And so my parents had enough money that they could give me a couple of bucks, and I could buy 10 comic books of whatever I wanted. So I just randomly discovered them, but then I just fell in love with them. And a lot of kids that I grew up with liked comic books too. But of all my friends growing up, I'm the only one that I know of that kept reading, kept collecting. Everybody else dropped off at certain periods in their life.
Yeah. And you never contacted anyone afterwards?
I'm still in touch with my best friend. He still lives in California. I live in Virginia now in the United States. But I remember when he and I were in college, or I don't know, do you guys call it university or?
Yeah, I guess that would be the equivalent of
university. Yeah. And he and I went to a flea market. And I saw some DC comics that I didn't have, and I don't know, I picked up 6 or 7 for $1, and he said, "You're still into comic books?" And I said, "Yeah, I still am." And that was Silver Age DC that I was collecting at the time. But yeah, I think it's just part of the normal ebb and flow of being a young person, that you pick up comic books and then eventually you move on. And this is I am substantially older than pretty much everybody else in fandom at this point. So I mean, I've been collecting them for over 50 years.
Yeah, that's longer than most of us here on YouTube. But I mean, that's also why I wanted to talk with you, because you have a unique perspective that not many of us do. So you're a true veteran in this comic book hobby game.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. But for a period of time, I mean, I don't know if it was something spectacular or anything, but what made you quit comic books for a time? Because I know that is a factor in your story.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you. I was reading comics from when I was 6 to about 17 years old in what we call high school here. And and I still have a problem with Bronze Age JLA, Justice League. I was reading it while having lunch in 1976, 1977, probably. And I just came to the realization that I said, why am I reading this? Why? What? I don't care if the Justice League goes to Thanagar or something. There are girls out there that I need to call. I want to play golf. I mean, I'm trying to study. Why? I mean, the late period Bronze Age for DC, which is what I grew up collecting, I consider from like, I don't know, 76 to when I picked it back up. I think that was a very dry creative period for DC. And they weren't doing anything innovative or interesting like in the early 70s, late 60s. And I was just like, this isn't interesting. And I quit when I was 17. And I would periodically still collect Silver Age DC, but modern comic books, I was just like, I'm not picking those up. They're like $1 or 50 cents anyway.
Exactly. So it's a price change, also a style change, also because I guess that the 70s Batman issues was still affected by the 66 show, making it sort of campy, I guess. Or was it, when did Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil step in? I'm very bad at this.
That's fine. I first noticed Neil Adams' work in 1968 on World's Finest. So I was 9, and that's when I fell in love with his art. I remember he started on World's Finest, and maybe he was doing covers too. And I think Batman by Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams started around 1970, and it got darker. Batman comics up until Batman 66, as everybody's calling it, it was up until that, it was always Batman in space and Robin Dies at Dawn and Interplanetary Batman, Jungle Batman, Zebra Batman, whatever.
Rainbow Batman.
Rainbow Batman, yeah. I have a fondness for that because it's my nostalgia, but in no way would I say those were good comic books. And right around 67, 66, Batman was fighting the Grasshopper Gang, and the art wasn't very good, and it was ridiculous. They did lean in Detective Comics. They did lean in on his being the quote world's greatest detective, which I thought was interesting. And the covers were always great. They were always by like Carmine Infantino, so I would always pick them up. So they were very lighthearted and goofy. But when Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil, particularly when he started writing the Ra's al Ghul stories, it got darker and more serious, much more serious. And I loved it. I was 11, 12 years old in that time period. And I was like, now this is something exciting. I am into this art. I am into this story. Those are, I have a genuine fondness for that time period because that was really exciting to go from really stiff, stilted artwork and stories about Kite Man or whatever it was, and going into Ra's al Ghul, all of a sudden calling him the detective, and you're going to marry my daughter and Talia. And I was like, what is it? Who are these people? This is amazing. So he created, and it wasn't all just about Ra's al Ghul, but
no,
I mean,
no, but it's a big part of it.
Yeah. And the stories that they did that weren't Ra's al Ghul were, just as good. But to create that character and that sort of world that he inhabited was, I don't know. It's all a judgment call, but I think that's one of Dennis O'Neil's finest moments is when he created that world for Ra's al Ghul, because it got really serious for a comic book.
Yeah, they made it more real in some aspect or form. And I would say that Neil Adams also modernized artwork a bit. He took it a step up, much like Todd McFarlane did for Spider-Man for Marvel.
Neil Adams back then always said, if superheroes existed in the real life, this is how they would be drawn, like I draw them. Yes. So that's, young hubris, but it's also true. His stuff was dynamic and sharp and realistic.
I mean, he could back up those words at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he definitely, that was one of those moments that changed comics for the better right in that time period.
Yeah.
It needed it.
So I was wrong when it came to that. The campy Batman side was after 1966. So sorry about that. But now I've learned a lot more about Batman, really, and when things actually took place in the real world timeline.
Oh, well, yeah, I could go on for 5 hours on Batman, but campy Batman led up to the Batman 66 era with, as you said, like Rainbow Batman and stuff. And then the stuff afterwards was more procedural, like Batman and Robin solving crimes, stuff like that, up until Neil Adams and Dennis O'Neil took it over. But I will say that I'm enjoying the resurgence of interest in Batman 66 because it was a fun period.
Yeah.
As long as you didn't, take it seriously. As an 8-year-old and 7-year-old, when the show was on, I took it seriously. And when I turned 13 and it came on in reruns, I watched it and I said, what the heck is this? This is ridiculous. I don't want to see this show, because it was, purposely campy. And then I in my 20s, I grew to see it as a fun satire and purposely campy, and I started enjoying it more. And I think I like that people are discovering it now and seeing it for sort of the cultural touchstone that really shoved Batman into the national consciousness in the US anyway.
Yeah, and I watched those episodes myself. I at least watched all the episodes once, because I did, just as many others did, pick up the Blu-ray set when it was announced. And I mean, it's about 112 something episodes, give or take a few. And then there's also the animated movies that they also made, still with same voice actors as, or most of them, same voice actors as the ones that played them in the live action show. And I really appreciated what it is. And I mean, I never saw it with young eyes. I mean, I saw the Batman Robin movie when I was like 8, but so that was the only thing that I could take in as a child. And of course, right then I took it totally seriously. But then watching the TV series from start to finish with the eyes of an adult, I mean, I could still appreciate it for what it is and what it did for the hobby itself. But I did end up selling it, I should tell you, because I thought that I had watched it and I tried to rewatch it again, but I didn't have the same drive since I had already done it once. I thought I would give it a second go, but then I figured that maybe I don't have the same drive now because I have watched it once, because this maybe isn't my nostalgia.
Yeah, and it would be pure nostalgia for me.
Exactly. So I think that's maybe a driving force that needs to back up to rewatch such a great amount of episodes. I know that you are currently rewatching or watching for the first time. Is it the Batman animated series?
Yeah, I am, and I understand the nostalgia. Taylor Brown, the Minister of Comics, is the one that got me into that, because I never watched it. It was in the 90s, and I had a daughter, and she gravitated towards other stuff on television.
Yeah.
So I never had a chance to watch it. And now I'm watching it as an adult, and I can really appreciate, first of all, I appreciate the voice acting in that show. It is amazing.
Yeah.
The people they got, the stars they got, and the voice acting they get out of them is remarkable. And I so far, I would say 75% of the shows that I've watched, I absolutely love. There's only a tiny amount that I think are just sort of okay, but for the most part, I can see why kids grew up loving that show, because if I can enjoy it as an adult and kids enjoy it, it's written to a higher level
Absolutely.
than just some kids show. So I just got done with the first season, and now I'm about 10 episodes into the second season. The first season on my DVDs that I got is more than 60 episods long. So it took me a long time to get through that first season.
The same goes for a Blu-ray set. The first season is amalgam of a lot of stuff that it could really be 6 seasons maybe total.
Yeah. But I am enjoying it. I love the aesthetic of it. The art style, as developed by Bruce Timm, is brilliant. And I especially love the Paul Dini episodes, but there are a lot of episodes that I will be keeping my Blu-rays of it, because I will be going back and rewatching a lot of my favorites.
Did you know that the animation cells for Batman the Animated Series were, instead of see-through, they were painted on black cells?
Oh, they were?
At some parts, because there are so many scenes in that animated series that are in pure darkness, basically. So to save up time, you just added color on a black surface.
I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
And I don't know, maybe I should check this up and edit this part out in case I was wrong.
No, we're going to assume you're right. I assume you're right.
I hope so too, for the editing. Okay, so we had a brief period of time where you quit comic books.
Yeah.
But what made you come back into it?
Dark Knight Returns. I was living in Los Angeles at the time. I lived there before I moved out to Virginia. I grew up in Northern California. I moved to Los Angeles for a little bit of time. And I read in the LA Times that there was a new style of Batman being published. And I read the article about Frank Miller, and that he was a cross between Clint Eastwood and I can't remember the comparison now, but he was like
Dirty
more
Harry? No.
I don't. Well,
it didn't do
not necessarily
do with drugs, but
I don't. It was like he had more of a. The description in the paper was that he came forth as more of an avenging angel type thing. This is what I'm reading, and so and it was like a mixture of Clint Eastwood and I don't know, somebody else. So that piqued my interest, and I went to Golden Apple Comics, which is still there. And I said, I read about this comic, The Dark Knight Returns, and I haven't been and this is the key. I said, I haven't been into comics for about 8 years now, but this piques my interest. And he said, I will help you only because you said that. I have so many people coming in wanting to buy the first issue just because they read about it and they're not fans. They wanted to get a collectible, but I will sell you the first issue for like $10 and the rest of the set. And because he also had, it had just come out and he was already marking it up to $50 to keep people away from just coming in and grabbing up every copy. So he cut me a break and he described it to me and I said, this sounds amazing. And so I went home and I read it and I was like, I felt like I did back when I saw the Dennis O'Neil stuff, only more so. I was like, I have never read anything like this at all. This DC let this happen. DC let this Frank Miller guy write this. I can't even believe it. And I mean, it was just amazing. It was like the scales fell from my eyes. And then after that, when I moved to Virginia in '86, I started collecting Watchmen because I'm sure I read an article about it.
Yeah.
And then I was hooked from then on. And then Batman Year One came out. A little bit after that, Sandman and Hellblazer came out a little bit in the later '80s. And I was like, I can't believe DC is letting this stuff get published. It's so good. It's so different. It's so out there. It's so creative. It's such a different way of thinking of comic book characters.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Totally agree.
Yeah. And I was like, what else is there out there? And so that's when I got back into it. And I haven't stopped since.
No. And yeah, I've checked out several of those titles. How do you think about The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen especially? How many times have you reread those stories and how do you think they hold up today in the modern era?
That's a good question. I just got done reading Dark Knight Returns within this year, and I think it holds up. I think it holds up really well. It's as I remembered it. It's as exciting as I remember it. Watchmen is still as inventive as I remember it. Still with concepts. It always blows my mind when somebody comes up with such an out there concept for a comic book. Like Warren Ellis is one of those guys that comes up with these concepts for comic books that I'm like, how did a human being even think of this? This is unbelievable. And I think Watchmen, to me, this is a personal opinion, it still holds up for me. The color palette was like nothing I'd ever seen before, which was a big deal, which was as a big a deal to me as the really good art by Dave Gibbons.
Lots of purple, orange, and green.
Really,
I guess.
Yeah, bright colors.
A lot of popping colors. It sort of reminds me of how we wanted the first edition of the Killing Joke to be, or how it always should have been colored, I guess, because that first edition of the Killing Joke also had those popping colors in it.
Now that's a story I don't think, personally for me, has held up as well. I look at it now and I feel almost betrayed by it. I thought it was interesting when I first read it and I liked it, but I feel like the more, maybe since I had a daughter, the more in tune maybe I am with what women go through in society, in American society. That's all I can speak for is the United States, but what women really go through, because I have a wife and daughter. And Killing Joke to me seems mean-spirited to me now, just from my standpoint.
I can totally understand why.
And I don't have it in my collection. So, I mean, I owned the trade paperback or something and I didn't upgrade it. And I ended up saying, I'm just not going to reread this. I'm not comfortable with it anymore. And that's just me. I just look back on it and that and the death of Jason Todd to
Yeah,
me
but
really showed the dark side of comics, like really appealing to the least common denominator. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
because it's very daring to do, which is basically massacre or maim a child. Basically,
Yeah,
they were children. They were teenagers at the time.
right. Both of them, Batgirl and
Jason.
Robin, Jason Todd. Yeah, and um, I did, and I never liked the 900 number that you could call to vote for the death of Jason Todd. I thought that
Yeah.
was in poor taste. I never took part in it. I read it just to find out what was going on, but and then Killing Joke to me was just like, I have so many other things to read that are really great, and this doesn't do it for me anymore. I'm just going to move on.
Yeah, sell it off and read something that you'll enjoy instead. We're gonna repeat that a couple of times here, I think. Yeah. And of course, I just want to pitch in that I've also reread The Dark Knight Returns so many times. I don't think my two hands is enough to count it, actually. And I think it's stunning. And discovering Jim Lee later on, he was inspired by the two artists that was. One was Frank Miller, and I can totally see that. And the other one was John Byrne.
Mm.
And yeah, I guess that is one of the fascinations why I go back to it, just to take a stronger look at the artwork of Dark Knight Returns. But then there's also, of course, the inner monologue, which
Yeah.
I think is perfect for the character.
Yeah, and what you need to remember is that it was coming. That book came when DC was putting out Drek. I mean, the stuff leading up to in the early 80s, DC's stuff was boring and dry and uninteresting. And then boom, Dark Knight Returns comes, and it's just this huge bright light in the sky that happens. I mean, it changed comics overnight. The minute it came out, it changed comics forever.
Yeah.
I'm not overstating that at all.
He is not. He
Yeah.
is totally not. And I mean, both Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns has had very different iterations and adaptations, whether it be animated or live action. Have you seen the animated version, per se, of Dark Knight Returns?
I haven't. I'm just now getting into the DC animated universe, which I'm enjoying, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, but there's a lot to discover, so you just have to take one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And whenever you get to it, I hope you'll enjoy it. But one thing that actually, two things about the Dark Knight Returns movies. I would say, it helped me to find the rhythm of the dialogue and everything for the characters, because they pretty much took the script exactly from the comic books into the animated TV series. But the con of it, what you're missing out on, is that they took out the inner monologuing. That was, of course, a great aspect that is comic books, that we get to follow the mind pattern of our characters whenever we read them.
Yeah.
And then there's, of course, the State of Watchmen. And I don't know if you have or not, or will, but have you seen the Watchmen TV series?
Oh, yeah. Luis and I made a show about it. We did a YouTube show on it a couple of years ago, whenever it was on.
Yeah.
And we got on and we just raved about it, that it was one of the best things we've ever seen on television. That was a remarkable piece of television making. I mean, just remarkable. I loved that thing. I still haven't seen Watchmen the movie. I know there's like a 4-hour version of it out there.
Yes, there is.
I would like to see it, but this version, I mean, this television show was unbelievably great. I loved that thing.
It is.
I don't want a sequel. I don't want anything else.
No.
I just want it. Don't try and follow it up.
It works for something that never should have had a sequel. It enters in and gets out in such a way that you wouldn't think possible.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It was remarkable.
Yeah. So without spoiling anything, I guess we both can recommend anyone that think highly of the Watchmen comic book to also check out for live action TV series, even if there was any doubt in the beginning.
Yeah. I loved it.
Yeah. So as you know, with my channel, I try to reinvent myself sort of, because I used to make haul videos like every month or so, maybe even more, and collection videos like all people do, because we want to show up our stuff and everything. And I mean, we are a community that is built upon books and everything. And I actually recently, just today, counted how many books I had, because I sold some stuff and I was just curious on how many books I had. So I'm at about 400 right now, going down from 900, I should add. And I see that you're looking around in your room now.
I am, and I'm horrified.
I mean, do you know how many books you have? This is not an attack. This is not an attack, people.
I know. No, I don't know how many books I have. And I will be very honest with you, like I am with everybody else. I've only read about 25% of my collection, and I read every day.
I know you do. I know.
And I've only read about 25% of my collection. So especially last year during the pandemic, I did a couple of really big hauls, like ridiculous amounts of books that I had acquired, and vinyl and toys and stuff. And I did feel guilty. I'm like, should I really be making these haul videos for people? There are a lot of people suffering out there, dying, sick, jobless, losing their homes or apartments. Should I really be doing this? And
those people are not watching your haul videos anyways.
That's true. And I said that for my first and second big haul videos, and everybody to a person said, these things make us happy to see what you acquire and how happy you are about it and your excitement. This is why we're watching. This is entertainment for us. And I'm like, okay, if you're okay with it, because I'm not trying to flex or make people feel bad.
No,
my channel's all about positivity in comics. But I'm not going forward. I doubt I'm going to have any more big hauls, because I have now reached the stage of my life. I'm 62. I'm starting to purge. I'm still collecting books, but
yeah,
I'm starting to take a hard look at everything: statues, vinyl, books, and realizing that 3 to 5 years from now, probably downsizing, moving to a condo with my wife, this stuff has to go before then. I'm not humping 5,000 books or whatever it is to my next apartment. So I have to really, I'm starting as of yesterday and day before. I put my entire pop collection on eBay to get rid of all my pops. And
how did that feel?
Cleansing. It felt cleansing. There are a couple that I'm really attached to, so I put really high prices on them.
Oh, that's a way to go.
Yeah, if somebody wants to pay the money for them, fine. If not, then I'm going to keep them and be happy. There's only 2 of them. And out of I think I had like 40 or 50 that I put online. Whoa. And I was surprised by some of them, how expensive they were, what people were willing to pay, which, is fine with me. But there were only 2 that I super cared about. And if somebody's willing to give me the dosh, I'll take it. But I am cutting back on everything that I'm buying, and I am starting to purge. Purging my books is going to go slowly but surely. Getting rid of statues and vinyl, that's happening actively.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to probably collect more and more digitally. First of all, I've run out of space. I mean, I've got stuff on the floor, which is never a good sign. So I've run out of space, and I have to start collecting digitally. I just don't have the room.
Yeah, when I sell some stuff, I mean, as you said, you're taking it slowly, day by day. I would say that when you do that, instead of just taking half of a collection, okay, we'll sell half of that shelf. I mean, that's such a drastic thing to do. So I never did that. And by taking it day by day, week by week, I felt that it was so much easier to let go of stuff because I still had my attention towards the new stuff that I was getting in. Maybe not as much, but I was still getting in stuff because I still want to read new material. But I mean, as long as my attention is turned towards that, I won't notice the things that is leaving the door.
Right.
And I mean, by that, because you've sold some stuff already, do you feel that you're really missing something?
No, I feel the beginning of kind of a weight lifted off my shoulders, really. It's not a good thing when your collection starts to become a burden. And I'm not blaming anybody. I did this to myself, certainly, but I just have too much stuff. I don't need all this stuff. As happy as I am to get a new statue,
it's about the long-term happiness also.
Yeah, and being financially flexible and keeping my wife happy are two very important things. So, and those dovetail nicely with purging. She's very I said to her the other night, I am going to start purging things. And I can talk to her this way because I said it with a smile in my voice and I said it lovingly.
Yeah.
But I said, because she loves to help. I said, I am purging everything, but I do not want your help. And I do not want any suggestions. I'm just going to do it my way. And eventually things are going to get cleared out and you'll notice a big difference. And she said, I
think that's very good.
She said, I've never loved you more. So, so I think I said it the right way.
I think so too.
Yeah. So the answer to your question is I have no idea how many I have. I'm embarrassed to say I've only read 25% of them. And it's not like I ignore my books.
But I mean, you read an immensely amount of books each year. And I mean, I try to read like 10 books per month. I used to read maybe 15, 16, but then I started to work full hours again almost. So I noticed that, okay, my free time is not as free as it was when I was studying at home. That was a much more flexible time. So now I notice what's my new normal type of reading. Mm-hmm. And as you said, you read nonstop. So I think you're on a good way to being caught up because as you purge at the same time, you read still as much books as you used to. There's no change there. So I think this is the turnaround for you.
Right. Yeah. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. And just gonna pull out this question just out of nowhere because I thought it was gonna be fun. But what makes a man pour root beer on a graphic novel book? And I've seen which books you have poured it on, so I think I could take any answer here actually. And there's no wrong answer, of course. But yeah, just share with the audience.
Well. When I started my channel, I think I started back in 2017. I love root beer, and it turns out it's an acquired taste. It tastes different to people from Japan and South America. It tastes more like medicine to them.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where it's fabricated,
and people's palates are different because South Americans and the Japanese don't like root beer because it tastes like medicine to them. But I love root beer. It's a soda that, that ostensibly is created from the sassafras root. But I mean, it's real root beer is, but what we get is, just sugar and flavorings.
Yeah.
But anyway, I loved root beer at the time, and especially root beer floats, which helped me gain 20 pounds, which I'm trying to lose. But A good friend of mine said, "You love root beer so much. Why don't you pour root beer over the books you really hate?" And I said, "Okay, that sounds like a good idea."
Okay.
And I don't do it anymore. I haven't done it for a couple of
No.
years, just because I think it was funny at the time, and it got attention for my channel. But now I realize that a book like Batman Damned, that's a root beer book for me. I root beered that book because it was not a good book, but I also realized that there was a lot of time and effort put into that book by the writer and artist. Even though I didn't like it, there was a lot of effort put into it. So just because I didn't like it because it wasn't well written or didn't flow or something, is that really a reason to destroy a book? And I thought, it's really not. Just tell people that you didn't care for it and you warn them away from it. Now then, the last book I root beered was either last year or the year before that, and that was a hideous book called User by Devin Grayson. I would root beer that book every day of the year and have no problem with it. That was an awful, mean-spirited book that had child rape in it, with the adults doing nothing about it and almost consenting to it and encouraging it. It was, and this book won awards like GLAAD awards.
That confused me as hell when I heard that.
I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Kristen and I both read it, and we were both appalled at it. Kristen is Omnicat, one of my partners on the show, and it is appalling what is done to this young 14-year-old girl with nobody helping her out. And I root beered that. That was a impromptu one. We both talked about it, and I said, "F this! I'm getting root beer." Hang on, Kristen. And I went out and I got a bucket and a really crappy root beer and like Diet A&W or something. And I said, "This book is awful, and you shouldn't read it, and nobody should read it, and the writer should go to hell. They're awful for writing it." And I dumped root beer on it, and that's the last thing. That's the last time I root beered a book. But I have no qualms about that.
Yeah, but I don't think you should either, because it was quite a finale there with that book. I can't understand why you would do that, actually. And I kind of knew that it would be brought up also. So
yeah, that was just an awful little book. And so it was kind of a gimmick that was fun for a while, and then I think it just ran its course. And now I just tell people, don't get this book. Know, but I seem to be known for it, and I'm not going to try to deny that it happened, but I'm also going to try and respect the effort that writers and artists put into books, even if I don't care for them. If it's a subject matter that I find repulsive and appalling, like User, then yeah, that's different.
Yeah. So let's try to swing this around, because that's a heavy subject, I know.
Yeah.
But let's start talking about something positive then. What is the best thing, do you think, about the comic book community?
The community as a whole, made up of fans and readers?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's a willingness to help each other out. I don't know that another hobby has this, but I think if we take out the people that complain about every single thing in comic books, let's just take them out of the equation. I think people like you and me want to help other people read and enjoy comic books. That's why I started my channel. I want, if I get excited about a book, I want to tell somebody about it, and I want to help them read it. I want to help them get their hands on it. And I think that this community is like that. When you go into a really good comic book store, the owner or the employees will if you say what's good, they'll just throw tons of stuff at you and go, this is good, we love this, we love that.
Partly because they want to sell you stuff, but also because it's true.
Well, that is a good point, but you wouldn't believe the amount of comic book stores where I walk in and the clerk never lifts his head from his solitaire game.
There's that too.
Yeah, so when I go into one where they're like, hey, how's it going? Can I help you? And I'm like, yeah, do you have any, what's good in She-Hulk? And they're going, oh, well, Dan Slott's She-Hulk is really good. Why don't you try this? And if I'm asking, they won't, I'm not saying they're going to push something on me, but
no.
I think the community as a whole wants to help each other enjoy comic books and just try to get their enthusiasm out there to other people. So the best thing about the comic book community is its willingness to help each other out. I'll tell you the other thing that I found remarkable is that how many viewers I have on my channel, viewers/fans, who have, I had surgery a couple of weeks ago because I've been suffering from this pain, and I've been absent enough from the Omnibro show and from my own channel that I finally had to make a video with a book review saying, this is what's happening. I'm getting surgery for it, and I'm sorry that I haven't made videos, but I'm in a lot of pain, and I'm getting a pain pump put in, and that will help me, I hope. And the amount of people that responded positively saying, take your time, get better, don't worry about the videos. We just want you healthy. We love the channel. We love you. We love your reviews. There was a ton of love that poured out of people that watched my channel, which I mean, I knew people liked my channel, but I didn't know that I was going to get hundreds of people writing me saying, get well, and we love your reviews and stuff. That, I mean, I don't know where else that happens. Maybe, I don't know. It's never happened to me before where I've had people so kind and nice to me that they're genuinely worried about how I'm doing. People are always sending me stuff on Instagram and maybe Facebook Messenger saying, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? How have you been doing since the surgery? You know, besides my wife and daughter, nobody else is checking on me in here. None of my friends are, well, one of my friends is checking on me, but none of my other friends are. And all these strangers in the YouTube community are. So I found that to be really meaningful, because a lot of times all you see online, you get sort of drawn to the toxic side of fandom, and any fandom has it. Whatever the hobby is, whatever the subject is, the internet has allowed everybody to have a voice, and you're going to get toxic people. I haven't seen any of that on my channel. I mean, I'll get the random comment like, you didn't even cover this or that. What's wrong with you? But 99% of the comments I get are positive and asking for book recommendations because they trust my judgment, stuff like that. It's been, it makes me feel really good, because I don't follow Twitter because I don't want to know what anybody has to say. I find Twitter to be incredibly negative. So I purposely don't follow it. But so hearing how much negativity there out there is in social media, it's a joy to get from people watching my channel that they're happy. They want me to be happy. They're happy reading comic books. It's like a big love fest, and it's really meaningful to me.
Both sharing and caring.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so if we should bring up the one of the big questions, I mean, because we all talk about it, we have all experienced it, the fear of missing out. What is the best advice to avoid FOMO? Do you have any advice?
I have developed, I do. And fear of missing out is real and very much a part of I will only speak for the comic book fandom
Of
or the
course.
comic book hobby, but it is very real, and I think a lot of people suffer from it. I suffer from it. You don't want to miss out on something
No.
because you don't want to have to. You either have to have it because you want it, or you're afraid if you miss it, it's going to be more expensive down the road.
Yeah.
We have a lot of tools at our disposal now that tell us what book, strictly for books, what books are coming out when, all the way up to April of next year.
Yeah.
I think the best way to avoid FOMO is to set a budget, stick to it, and look at those lists, and look at what's being released between now and April, and really pick out not just stuff that you think you're going to want. Pick out the most important stuff first. Like for me, in October, the Batwoman omnibus is coming out, which I swore was never coming out. And
I had my doubts too.
I'm so happy to be wrong about that. But that's a book I have to have. I want that. And so I budgeted for it, and I made sure that I didn't order 15 other trade paperbacks. I'm going to get that, and a few other omnibuses, and I'm trying to cut back on other stuff, but set a really firm budget and look out along the timeline and pick out the books that you can afford, that you really want, and just stick with that and realize everything gets a reprint now.
Mostly.
Days, which wasn't true 5 years ago.
No.
Everything gets a reprint. Action, if we go into action figures and toys and statues and vinyl and stuff,
that's a whole nother area.
Yeah, I it's hard to control FOMO on statues, I know, because I've canceled so many statues and lost my deposit.
Oh,
but
that's a heavy hit. I know. I can imagine.
I'd rather take a $50 hit than end up having to buy a $500 statue that I don't really want.
That's true. Well,
so I'm very careful with statue buying now, but that we're talking about books. That's my advice. Be extremely choosy, know what's coming out, and set a strict budget for it.
Yeah. And I've given my fair share of different advices on my channel as well, and they collaborate with the advice that you give, because as you said, set a budget, because you have to stick to it, because if you don't set a budget, you'll end up having no money left at the end of the day, no money in your savings account or anything, because okay, this book comes out, so I'll just take some savings money and put it in also.
Taking money out of savings, no.
I mean, I can imagine people doing that. I have done so other people must have done so as well, because when I was showing up at a live stream of yours 3 years ago, you specifically asked me if there was any questions that I didn't want to answer, and I said I don't want people to ask me how I can afford this, because I'm pretty sure back then that I was taking some money out of my savings just to afford some books, and there's no shame in that, really. I mean, I've turned it around several times. It's not like I went into a negative number or anything, not taking loans or anything to afford a comic book hobby, but I mean, still, you kind of want to go plus in the end of a month, and there's so many people that live month to month, paycheck to paycheck, and if you do that, you should not spend your money on comic books in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And if you should, at least not, and if you should pay yourself something fun and buy some comic books, at least buy within a budget so that you still have money saved for next month.
And make sure you bank some. Yeah. I think one problem that people have in the comic book world is that a lot of us tend to be completionists.
Yeah.
We want the full run of Fantastic Four, or we want everything that Jonathan Hickman has written, something, like that.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we can run into trouble if we're completionists. It's a hobby that lends itself to wanting to complete a run, and then once you get this run complete, well, gee, what follows next? And then so that can be tough to battle.
Yeah, and I recently made a Spider-Man reading marathon. Recently, it was a couple of months back, but I read pretty much everything that I had collected with the hardcover collections of the Amazing Spider-Man, all the way back to Amazing Fantasy 15 up till issue number 801. Everything that I had that was collected within hardcover editions. So not every Amazing Spider-Man issue, of course, but a very fair amount, 75% maybe, is collected.
That sounds like a lot of reading.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun also.
Yeah, well, good. That's the point.
And I very much appreciated that, because I felt that the ending of Dan Slott's run with issue number 801 was a fitting ending to walk away from the character. Because let's face it, if Batman and Amazing Spider-Man, they're going to be published forever. So if you want an ending to those series, you'll have to find your own.
That is a good point. That is a really good point.
Yeah, because they're never going to stop. It's money.
Yeah.
And with that, during my journey of reading all of that Amazing Spider-Man material, I sold off some stuff, but I felt that for my next reread, I don't necessarily have to reread this part, and rather than jump to this stuff, because this stuff I like. So being more of an essential reader more so than a completionist.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm starting my next big marathon, which is on Batman. And there I purged even more stuff that I didn't want to reread during this, because I wanted to be a more efficient reading marathon. So I got rid of maybe, I think, Ed Brubaker Batman in trade paperback. I didn't think that was the strongest part of Batman.
Okay.
Personally, I mean, I still have Batman Murder and Batman Bruce Wayne Fugitive collected, but it was but they sort of double dipped with Ed Brubaker paperbacks. So this is not a rant on the Ed Brubaker Batman run per se, but I just took that as an example because it double dipped. Two, it wasn't the strongest material out of the whole spectrum of Batman, because I have a lot of Batman books. And so I tried to be more efficient with my space and my time as I ramble on and say over and over again in my videos. But it's really just to be more efficient with my money and the time that I take to read all my books.
Yeah. And speaking of Batman, that reminds me, I have a ton of the Golden Age omnis of Superman and Batman. I am never going to read those. If I was 13 years old, I would love those. But because that's when I had a fascination with the Golden Age.
Yeah.
But I now realize that I got to get rid of those.
Yeah, because if you put it on the scale of I'd rather read this, it gets so much easier to actually let go, I think.
Yeah, I am never going to read those. I just am never going to read them. There's tons of stuff in here that I'd much rather read. I am totally putting off reading those. I got to sell those. Thank you. Good. I came to a decision.
Good. And I mean, it gets easier along the way, because as you have maybe less stuff, but you feel that the stuff that you got rid of doesn't matter. You're still looking at the stuff that you have and appreciate that. I think that makes you feel richer than ever, actually, with your comic book collection. I mean, I'm more happier with my collection now than I ever was, because, I mean, it feels more personal now to me.
Yeah.
And sure, I have several titles that everybody else have, but it's not really about the titles themselves. It's more about the thought behind the book and why I have it, more so than the book itself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm gonna try to curb my minimalist talking here, but
no, I appreciate it. There's a lot to learn from you, I think, as far as it goes.
I mean, I tried to stand as an example, and I say this a lot. I'm not funny. It's not funny to watch my videos anymore. I don't think, because it's always bringing up, I mean, questions that maybe you should ask yourself or think in another mindset. But I'm still trying to have fun. But yeah, I just try to show a different way of collecting.
Yeah, there's a lot to learn from your videos. I think I like them a lot.
Thank you. I hope people that are watching this are also watching the other videos as well. If not, check them out. And yeah, this is sort of the last big question for my interviews, and it's really what this whole interview stands around, and that is, how would you describe your fandom?
My fandom, the people that watch my channel.
I mean, how would you describe yourself as a comic book fan? What makes you a comic book fan then? However you would like to persuade that question.
Yeah, okay. I want reading comics, the act of reading comics, I want it to be fun. I want to read a comic and get engrossed in it, and get transported to a different world. And my whole thing with comics is they're an escape medium to help break up the day, whatever kind of day you're having. I just want to have fun. There's no reason. I feel sorry for people that have videos out there that are ripping books apart, figuratively, where they will say, this comic book sucked for this reason, and they go ahead and rip it apart, blah, 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 blah. I feel bad for them. I want to read a book and say, I just read a great book, and you guys got to read it. It's so fun. So the ability to have fun with my comics that's how I would describe my fandom.
Nice.
I just want to have fun, and
we all do.
Yeah, and sometimes I learn some things too. I mean, you know, there are different things that I get from different books, and I read everything possible except for manga, because it's hard for me to read because of my old inelastic brain. But I read all kinds of different comics, and if I read it and it's not fun, I'm not going to reread it. Out the door. I want to keep things that are fun, that I want to reread. I just want to enjoy the act of reading comics. I think I'm blessed. I'm really lucky that I kept this love for comics as long as I have, because I just have a blast reading comics. I get such a kick out of it.
Great answer. And I know I asked that question before when you and Taylor had your show live stream, and you sort of answered each other, and he said that also. But I think that's nice, knowing what each other, what you like, both in comic books as in what you find so good within this comic book hobby.
Yeah, that was interesting. I remember you're asking that, and we did answer for each other. We've been doing shows long enough that we know what each other likes in books. And that was funny that we answered for each other.
Yeah. So the last question, the simplest one for today, is simply, where can people find you, Jess?
Right on, man. Omnidog's Vault on YouTube. That's Omnidog's Vault. Look for the dog face with the Judge Dredd helmet on. And Omnidogs_Vault on Instagram. I've been feeling well enough that now I've been posting again on Instagram, and I'm ready to start doing videos again.
Great. And of course, I'll link all of these in the description down below so people can find it. And I just want to thank you, Jess, for joining me in this pre-recorded live stream interview. And thank you for helping me to find fandom and just have a great talk.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. I have been watching you for years, and it's a real honor to speak to you person to person. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoy your videos too. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And to all of you that are watching, thanks so much for watching this. We'll see if we'll do this again sometime. I hope so.
I hope so too.
Good. And yeah, that's it. Thank you all for watching this video. I'll see you in another one.
Peace
Bye
and
bye.
love. Peace and love.